guess which one of these two I ended up loving out of the Doc Ock Silk 2-pack? This year definitely proved that neither Target nor Walmart were the only ones privy to getting exclusives from Marvel Legends. Amazon, along with the Venom 3-pack that I've already covered on the channel, so if you guys want to check out that review, it is available, so you can check that out after this one. But one that I haven't had the chance to come around to until now is going to be the Amazon exclusive Marvel Legends Silk and Doc Ock 2-pack from one of the Silk storylines from the comics. Now, I'll admit, I'm not super well versed on this particular storyline. However, I am aware of the character Silk, one of the many spider people amongst the Spider-Verse. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about her is just how much of a variant she is to your typical Spidey. She shoots webs through her fingers. She's much more agile. She's actually pretty cute, to be honest. Okay, but anyways, she's a fictional character, and this time she was bundled in by Marvel Legends along with an exclusive Doc Ock figure right here. Now, before we get to the big guy in green over here, I do need to tackle Cindy Moon, aka Silk, first, because right off the cuff, you'll notice that there's something awfully familiar about her body type. And if you guessed it right by watching the beginnings of this video, or maybe even owning the figure yourself, you'll notice that yes, it's the same body type that I've already covered literally twice on the channel, one of which I actually already kind of aforementioned, which was the Venom 3-pack. It's actually the same body as the Agony figure from that set, and then over to one of the most revered bundles from the year from Marvel Legends thus far, the Renew Your Vows 2-pack, which came with Spinneret. Despite having some pretty cool little decals and paint jobs, it is arguably the same exact body sculpt, and I know that Marvel Legends is not exactly someone stranger to repaints, and I know it's something that I should probably get used to by now, but for the amount of pricing that we're going for, this 2-pack retails for about $55.99, and it's being scalped up in prices these days from both Amazon, eBay, and even Mercari alike. And it's a little steep when you take into consideration that they're just taking the same body type and giving it a new decal. Now, granted, it's a decal that looks pretty awesome in person. You have the overall black body with the decals of the white and the red web here in the middle, with the little zigzaggy S in the middle to signify the Silk name. And overall, it looks like a very dynamic, cool-looking stencil design on her costume, and it's very emblematic of the character from the comics. It's just that there's the consumer in me that just looks at the concept of this being a figure that I've already owned, and I just can't shake off that notion that something is amiss here. You know, I really do think that Marvel Legends needs to take into consideration that they should try to make some new figures. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that just gets bothered by this, and the more and more I start to get flustered and kind of begrudging about this concept, the more I look at the year of 2023 and think to myself, if I can tell right off the bat from publicity photos that this is the exact same body type, I might just abstain from purchasing altogether and actually vote with my wallets. The only thing that gets by with this figure is, apart from the color scheming that I thoroughly do like and is painted on rather well, is actually the face sculpt. They did an actually really cool job of getting across the Cindy Moon design with the scarf over her mouth, the eyes that look very much lifelike, not Hot Toys levels, but just enough to actually bring a sense of dimension and thoroughness to the way that the eyes are designed. And the hair sculpting is actually done really, really well, kind of giving off this slightly bluish tint to the threads of the hair, and it's etched in rather nicely. So it's actually one of my favorite head sculpts that I've come across in a Marvel Legends in quite a while. You even see a little bit of the red accents coming across the gloves, the white tips on the shoes. Kind of wish that we would have gotten a little bit more going on here on the back. I feel like it's a pretty barren back that doesn't, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. It's like an empty canvas, so to speak. And even if this is part of her costume, I feel like this could have been a liberty that Marvel Legends could have taken into account as far as designing the costume just a little bit more dynamic, at least to give the usage of a body type that they've recycled before one more time. Outside of that, it's not a bad looking figure. It's just that, again, it's gnawing at the back of my brain knowing that this is essentially just another repaint. And I know that it's nothing new for Marvel Legends, but eventually something's got to give way. And because it's the same type of body as Spinneret, it's going to have the same articulation, so we'll breeze on through. The head is able to rotate as well as pivot downwards via the hinge and be able to move upwards about that far, and it's also able to slightly incline from left to right. Arms are able to fully rotate 360 degrees as well as properly extend almost beyond the 180 point, as well as the slightly thin and frail bicep swivel that I've kind of complained about before with this particular body type. 2 joints at the elbow that are fully able to bend all the way upwards. The wrists are able to rotate 360 degrees as well as allowing the hinge on the inside to pivot inwards and outwards. Torso has the mid-body cut that is able to fully rotate as well as very generously extend towards the back, especially for some dynamic poses that allow this particular body type to do, but not much in the way of crunching inwards, slightly side to side, and no waist articulation due to, again, the body type. Then you are able to lift the legs almost about that far up, not much in the way of back because of that voluptuous backums that is sculpted back there that I've already noted in reviews prior. You are able to fully extend up until that point, a little beyond the 45, but not all the way up to the 90-degree angle. Thigh swivels that are able to rotate all the way across, but do be wary of the lining going alongside the paint job right there. 2 joints at the knee that are fully able to bend all the way up and are pinless, so they kind of blend in with the body. And then, of course, the archetypal ankle joints that Marvel Legends have that are able to fully pivot all the way down, slightly up, and don't really rotate horizontally, but are able to when you have the foot down all the way and are able to slightly pivot inwards and outwards like so. So if you have seen those prior reviews, you'll kind of get the gist of where the articulation lands, and it's doing a pretty serviceable job, but again, just wish that things would be just a little bit different with the base figure. But thankfully, what is able to save Cindy Moon Silk here is actually the accessory she comes with, because they kind of gave her some very complimentary stuff that makes her almost stand out just a little, just a fraction over the likes of Spinneret from the Renew Your Vows 2-pack. Now, just a little disclaimer, I am kind of cheating, so to speak, with the accessories because she technically comes with other things right out the box. I kind of had to move things about to look a little bit more formal for the review. Right off the bat here, you'll notice that she's got fisted hands. She technically doesn't come with that out of the box, but you'll notice that most Marvel Legends really come with that by default. On the side, she will also come with these slightly open hands. They kind of look like they're meant to hold stuff, but it's kind of weird because she doesn't really have an exact accessory. Well, I guess you can kind of cheat and work with one of the ones that I'll cover right now momentarily, but she's got semi-open hands, and then she's got completely open hands that aren't as stretched out to be able to pose with in a wall crawling stance, but they're kind of halfway through, so to speak. But that's not my favorite accessory. My favorite one when it comes to the hands is a right hand that has web fluid attached to the fingers and kind of coiling itself from shooting its way out in this direction, as well as kind of circumventing around one of her forearms, well, the only forearm that's able to work, which is the right one. And there's a sense of fluidity and dynamicy. Is that even a word? I don't know. But there's kind of like an action sense to this accessory that's kind of different in a while. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about it that I really, really enjoy. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and remove the right fisted hand, which is pretty easy, of course. Just give them a quick tug. You do have to play with this one a little bit because you kind of have to inject the forearm inside, kind of wrap it around, and then make sure you have the peg fitted in here. And then once you do, sadly, you do sacrifice a little bit of the hinge joint articulation you had going there for the remainder of the other hands inside of here. But what you get in return is a really cool looking kind of web shooting mode, specifically designed for Silk because of the way that she naturally shoots out web. And look at that. It just looks awesome. I don't know, maybe it's a change of pace from the usual 2 fingers pressed in like this from your typical Spider-Man, and maybe that's why I'm kind of gravitating towards it a little bit better than some other ones I have covered in the past. Now, going back to those semi-open hands, there must have been a reason for why they threw them in. And also a very good reason to not throw away the hard work they put on that head sculpt, specifically the face, because of how well detailed it is. And good thing they didn't, because they threw in an extra head that comes without the mask, showing the full proportions, paint job, and detail behind that beautiful face. And look at that. It's honestly one of my favorite head sculpts I've came across a Marvel Legends in quite some time. So I really respect the fact that they were able to take a face and pretty much just pull down the mask and give us the full look at Cindy Moon, and it's beautifully detailed, well sculpted, and as such they threw in a separate scarf piece that doesn't go over the mouth. It's sculpted in a way that it's impossible to put up, but the main reason why is because it's actually meant to go right underneath it, kind of like this. So when you swap out the heads, it looks like she simply just has her scarf down, and it's a nice little detail. In case you don't really want to do that, you could go ahead and swap the heads, which is relatively easy to do. Just give them a slight tug, pops off very nicely like this, pop on the unmasked head, which pops neatly into place, and then what you can basically do, as I like to do, is take one of the hands, swap it for the semi-open hand that is designed almost like it's holding something, and put her scarf inside of it to make it look like she's removed her scarf while at the same time shooting out a web, and there you have it. That's pretty much an awful lot of the replayability they threw in with just a handful of accessories that complement the character, complement the figure. And because of that, I honestly feel myself warming up more and more to Silk, and she was honestly not the main reason for why I got this 2-pack in the first place. The main reason is to have a slightly more comic accurate Doc Ock. As you can see right here, he is essentially the other half of the 2-pack, and what was originally my main reason to get the 2-pack is to have a Marvel Legends Doc Ock that looks not only like an amalgamation between the comic accurate Doc Ock as well as a slight interpretation of the animated series while not going full animated series, and you can honestly see an awful lot of those influences coming through here in the aesthetic of this Doc Ock. He's got the bowl cut, he's got the grimace, the very ugly face that's covered up by the glasses there, as well as the very over-the-top green suit with yellow accents, boots, and gloves. The sculpting was never going to really be an issue because there's an awful lot of work to be able to do here, because it's not like you're going for small details, you're going for much more bombastic looking pieces. I do think that a little bit of the joints, especially around the arms and the knees, could have used a little bit of extra work to make them a bit more durable and robust, especially with a character like Doc Ock. But overall, it's a pretty decent sculpting and design work for a Doc Ock, and they even got the eyes etched in and painted underneath the glasses. And I know this because sadly the head that I'm kind of demonstrating here, which is technically speaking the alternate head that he came with on the side, and again for the posterity of the review I went ahead and I swapped them here to start things off, but sadly the glasses on this one is actually starting to warp its way up towards the top part of the head. And on the bright side, it's able to show me the paintwork that they went ahead and did for the eyes, which is a nice little detail, a little quirk that they threw in. But sadly, it's not really placing the glasses in place, and it's kind of riding themselves upwards like that. So it's kind of bugging my OCD just ever so slightly, but overall, not a bad looking figure for a Doc Ock rendition. And the articulation is not all that bad either. Let me get Silk just slightly out of the way so that then we can take a look at something that is a little strange with Doc Ock, because you get a good chunk of actual points. It's the points themselves and the quality behind them that kind of puts me a little bit on unease. So the articulation behind the head is as follows. You're able to rotate as well as slightly pivot downwards, only because of the girth of his massive head that Doc Ock has always had. It's only to, harness all the intelligence that's inside. You know what I mean? He's one of the smartest people out there, the power of the sun in the base of his head. But because of that hinge joint, he is able to pivot all the way upwards like so. So it's actually pretty generous on that front. Not much in the way of tilting in any kind of direction, slightly towards the side, but not really much there. But you are able to rotate the arms vertically 360 degrees. Now, when we get to the extension is where we get into some troublesome waters, because he is able to technically extend them. They're just so robust and difficult to do that I highly advise, this is my little piece of advice here from messing with the figure for a couple of days, is to take your fingers and try to move that extension point by the ball joints themselves and not use the remainder of the arms as leverage. Because sadly, the biceps, I'm skipping a little ahead here, the biceps are able to rotate 360 degrees right there, but the joint is so flimsy that multiple times I found myself on the verge of damn near breaking that little piece. If any of you own either this Doc Ock figure or hell, any Marvel Legends that came out this year that's within this scale of size where it's like a very big, beefy kind of character, kind of like maybe the Mojo that was released recently, or any other variations that use very big pieces for their arms and their limbs, please let me know. Did they do a little bit of a half-assed job on the joints within those limbs? Because every time I try to extend the arms, I always feel like they're gonna bust here on the bicep, and that's pretty much one of the biggest demerits I can give Doc Ock here, which is a shame because you get decent articulation movement. It's just that it feels like it's compromising itself because of how feeble those bicep joints really feel. Once you do get them moving, you are able to extend the arms just a little shy of the 90-degree angle, and again, I'm scared to go on any further because of my worry of potentially breaking the bicep due to how thin it truly feels. Once you get to the elbows, you are able to move them all the way upwards via the two joints in there, but similarly to the bicep, they're really thin, and because of how brass these pieces feel, they kind of remind me a little bit of the Venom 3-pack. That Venom with those leg joints, those knee joints that felt kind of weird to move them about, especially in the lateral direction, kind of like I'm doing so right there. It just feels kind of off and flimsy in a way where I just feel like that joint, the piece that's holding everything together, is gonna break off. So be warned, because I'm hardly ever going to pose this figure if that's going to be the case. Now, when we get down to the wrist, you are able to fully rotate them in place, as well as allowing the hinge to move the hand outwards and forwards like so. And you do have a mid-torso cut that is able to rotate 360 degrees, as well as extend slightly towards the top, but slightly crunch more than I was actually expecting it to do so. So that's a welcome little pleasant surprise. So you are able to crunch inwards and outwards only about that far like so, slightly side to side as you can note right there. Sadly, no waist articulation of any kind or any form of rotation. Once you get to the top legs, you kind of have a similar case going for the extension, where you are able to slightly move the leg upwards like so, but not much going on in the form of towards the back. And then once we get to extension, again, it's very robust, very difficult to do so, slightly ratcheted, but every time I do so, I feel like I'm pressing on the knees just a little bit too much. So you're gonna have to do your movement more so from the top of the leg with your fingers like that if you want any form of extension. And when you do, it only really goes about that far. And despite the frivolous nature of the joints themselves, you are able to bend the knee at 2 points right about right there. And then the ankle joints are, of course, the typical Marvel Legends ones, though it feels a little better to bend them and pose them because of how much thicker and girthier they are, so they're a bit more robust. And they are able to pivot downwards and upwards, as well as slightly pivot inwards and outwards like so across the ankle, and not much in the way of rotation due to the way that it's designed unless you pivot the foot all the way down. Now notice I slightly skipped ahead. That's because even though you're not able to rotate the ankle all the way around, you are able to rotate the leg at two different parts. This is where we get into some pretty positive territory with Doc Ock's articulation, because not only do you get thigh swivels that are able to rotate all the way around, but you also get a boot cut. They went ahead and threw in a boot cut right above the piece right here that separates the yellow from the green, and so you have 2 points that it's able to swivel at, and therefore you get quite an awful lot of footing, so to speak, for Doc Ock. So if he's to stand on his own, he can do so actually rather well. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Otto Octavius. He's not meant to stand alone. He's meant to stand on 8 legs, and you're probably wondering this whole time, where are those other 4 tentacles, those other limbs? As you'll notice right here, you actually have the 4 points where you can plug them in, and they come bundled separately, so it's up to you to assemble them together. 2 tentacles come side by side next to each other, and they're kind of shaped in this design like so, and these are technically, they're meant to be the ones that are at the topmost part of his setup here. So technically, you could just kind of place them inwards like so. It doesn't really take an awful lot of effort to plug them in. It's just one cylindrical peg right there that inserts into what is technically a hexagonal design inside of the slot right there. But either way, all you have to do is just give them a firm press. And it's funny because they fit in there rather snug, but they're still a little easy to come off. So you just be careful in the form of handling him, because it could be a little easy to have them come off, especially if you're kind of maneuvering them a little unruly like. Now, those are the top two. He then comes with two other ones that are designed to be a bit more sporadic, a bit more chaotic, and they're kind of zigzagged like so. And these are technically the ones that you're supposed to plug in at the bottom. That way they're kind of out of the way. Like when you plug them in, they're meant to look like so. But of course, there's no exact instruction or mandate to have the arms plugged in a specific way. So the way I kind of like to do it, I mean, by formality's sake, this is how you're technically supposed to design and plug in the tentacles, to kind of have them be posed like this. But it's totally up to you. Sometimes what I like to do is actually at least take one side and swap them in that direction, just to kind of, like I said, give this like tone of chaos to the tentacles, kind of give them a life of their own, to be like, hey, these can be going off in different directions. So have the unruly one kind of here up top, and then one of the much more formal ones at the bottom. Kind of have everything like so. And there you have, for the most part, Doc Ock complete with his tentacles. And the tentacles themselves are modeled after a much more comic book accurate look. They kind of have like this slight bluish tint to them, but they're overall generally more along the lines of being silver. They kind of look a little translucent in some angles, especially around the claw area with the little blue indentation in the middle. The design behind the claws themselves is pretty basic. And to me, they look great on Doc Ock, especially when it comes to simply giving him a more neutral pose, and that goes double for when you have the fisted hands plugged in, because on the side, he comes with much more actionable swap of hands that are meant to be a bit more clawed up and open, so you can swap him in for that, or you can have him be posed with the default head that he comes with out of the box. But again, for the posterity of the review, I swapped it here for a grimace and mad and angry Doc Ock looking head, which complements the glasses just a little bit better. It doesn't feel like they're riding up whatsoever. It probably because of the way that he has the frown going, it kind of fits the glasses and it doesn't look like it's riding up, and you still get the detail with the eyes underneath. The issue though is that to have some of these accessories be complemented well, he has to be in an action pose, and to do an action pose, especially with the tentacles, they need to be a bit more bendable and articulated. And even though they are bendy and they don't feel very frail or breakable, they can actually kind of endure a little bit of that movement, they don't really stay in place. They kind of feel like they just revert back to the static position of having the chaotic ones zigzagging and then the neutral, much more neutral ones coiling into a kind of horse-shaped design. And I kind of wish that there was a bit more maneuverability with the tentacles, because we've gotten Doc Ock figures before that have had that feature, especially with the little wire built inside of it that allows for an awful lot of the posing and the bending that you do stick and actually stay in place. This Doc Ock doesn't really do that, and that's another wasted opportunity that would have elevated this figure to the expectations that I kind of had for it. Thankfully, what is able to kind of make up for that is the surprising level of accessories and quality and paint decals that took me by surprise with Silk here, that ended up being my favorite out of the two. But nevertheless, this is still a worthwhile collection and set for anybody that is down to get some of the more worthwhile Marvel Legends that were released this year, and to actually have an Amazon exclusive be worthwhile of that exclusivity. And whether you've been wanting a comic accurate Doc Ock to go up against your Spidey, or you actually are a fan of the Silk character, I feel like you're kind of winning either way with this 2-pack, because even though there are a couple of caveats, especially leaning more so towards the Doc Ock figure with its articulation and the missed opportunity behind the tentacles, there's still an awful lot working here in its favor that makes me feel that if you can find it at the MSRP price, or maybe even a little lower, this is definitely a worthwhile pickup for Marvel Legends collectors, and I'll give the set a pretty decent 7 out of 10. Doc Ock is very much known for being a Rogue Gallery member of Spider-Man's villains, but what about Silk? Do you guys think that she should get her own movie, her own maybe Disney Plus series of some kind? But then again, that is Sony, so I don't know how that's really gonna work, because we know that Sony hates Spider-Man. but they love their villains. So what do you guys expect for a Doc Ock movie played by Jared Leto? Let me know in the comments section below, and of course, as always, if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. If not, hit the thumbs down, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications for more Spidey and Marvel Legends goodness. And as always, stay humble. I'll see you later.